Welcome to Plant Your Seed. I'm your host, Fred Ferris. On each episode, we share stories of how ordinary people have transformed their lives. Each story is compassionate, each story is authentic, and each story is a transformation. Here are the stories of the people who are changing our world by transitioning to a plant-based diet. Today on Plant Your Seed, joining us from British Columbia, Canada, we have Natasha and Ed Tatton. The Tattons are the co-founders of BReD, a B-Corp certified vegan sourdough bakery located in Whistler, British Columbia. The bakery specializes in sourdough and vegan baked goods. BReD, the cookbook, is an homage to their bakery and will be out November 7th, but is available now for pre-order. Welcome, Natasha and Ed.
Hi, Fred.
Hi, Fred. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for being here on Plant Your Seed. Now, before we get to the cookbook and your bakery, I would love to start with your vegan journeys. How and when did you transition to a plant-based diet?
I'll let Tash go first because she went vegan first. So and then she pulled me along. So, jump into it.
It's a funny story. So I kind of it started way back when I was a child. I would say the initial seeds, I suppose. I never liked eating meat. I didn't like the texture. But my mother used to kind of force me to eat everything on my plate, and I couldn't get down from the table. I don't think anyone brings their kids up like that anymore, but this was the 80s. My mother was quite Victorian. So yeah, wasn't allowed to get down from the table till everything was eaten. And I would just sit there chewing on bits of meat for like hours until she said, right, bedtime. And there was no playtime after dinner because I was just sat there trying to eat this food. And then by the age of 7, my mother had got fed up of this and had kind of accepted that I wasn't going to eat meat. Mm-hmm. And so then she allowed me to basically become vegetarian. Although I can't remember if there was still like a few fish fingers or something like that. But in my mind, I don't think I knew it was like a kind of meat, basically, because to me, fish is meat. I mean, it's an animal body, so it's meat. Mm-hmm. After you become vegetarian, it kind of becomes, well, back in the 80s anyway, it became a bit tricky going around to people's houses for dinner because you'd have to tell them I don't eat meat. Mm-hmm. And I remember a lot of the dads used to be at my friends' houses, used to be quite old school and sort of didn't like it and would say, oh, you need to get some meat in you. And I remember people saying, oh, you're vegetarian. And so I kind of, adopted that label, I suppose, in the end. But it took me a while to fully understand what vegetarian meant. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I kind of grew up as an unhealthy vegetarian because, nobody was really looking into my nutrition or anything. I think I was quite an anemic teenager, but, you don't care. You just eat what you want to eat, don't you, when you're a teenager? Yeah. And then when I got into my 20s, I met Ed. He was a fine dining chef and came from a background where you sourced the most, and I'm going to use these words lightly because obviously I'm vegan now, so I have different opinions, but ethical meat, organic, free range, slaughtered as humanely as possible, blah, 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 the best meat you can get kind of thing. So was really proud of that kind of aspect of culinary arts and worked in really fancy restaurants. And he was kind of frustrated that I didn't eat meat because he wanted to show off all these, fancy dishes. But on the flip side, I kind of got him eating a heavy vegetarian diet as well. Mm-hmm. So he would cook meat at work, but generally we ate vegetarian at home, always cooked vegetarian. And then later on in my life, we ended up in Whistler in this ski resort, and I got a job working at ski school as a ski school support person. And basically what that meant, which I didn't realize until I started my first day, was I was the first cook at the ski school for like 800 ski instructors and kids. And suddenly, like the first time in my life, I had to cook meat for people. And it was a bit of a shock, but the job offered me like free snowboard lessons, a great social life, blah, blah, blah. So I was cooking all this meat and it was really bad quality stuff. And I was reading all the labels, and there were these things called wieners that were 40% reconstituted pork and a whole load of other junk. We don't even know what those things were. And I just remember feeling so bad about this, that I had to cook this and feed it to like 5-year-old children. And at the same time, this vegan raw juice bar opened at the bottom of the mountain in the village. And I would go there every day when I got out the gondola at the end of the day. Before they closed, I'd go and get a green juice or a smoothie. And all the people that worked there were beautiful, glowing babes that just emanated health and well-being and vibrancy. And then at ski school, everybody was eating the crap food and kind of getting spotty and depressed and overweight. And they were also drinking and partying with the après scene. But I kind of had these two lifestyles presented to me. It was like the healthy, happy vegans and then the unhealthy, like non-vegans. And I kind of eventually decided that I would cut out more animal products out of my diet. So I switched to almond milk instead of dairy and that type of thing. At the end of the winter, I got a job at the raw vegan juice bar and became a raw vegan chef. And I had to start experimenting with recipes because I had no idea about raw vegan stuff. Thank God for the internet. And suddenly I became this like raw vegan overnight in 2014. And it kind of went from there, really. I'm not a raw vegan anymore. I mean, we own a bakery now, but the veganism stuck with me. The raw bit didn't, although I do love eating a lot of raw vegan food, which Ed has. He's not quite as enthusiastic about as I am, but quite often we eat a lot of raw food and sourdough. And then Ed's journey kind of interweaves with mine.
Yeah, around that, maybe like Natasha said, she did a lot of cooking at home, and I love food. I came from that fine dining background, but I loved seasonal local produce, fruits and vegetables, having a good relationship with the local farmers, which we still carry on now. In the bakery as well. My story is a little bit different because, like I said, I was open-minded, and was happy to take the dairy out of my diet, because I actually have a heart condition that I had since a young age. I had various sort of operations through my teens, and then eventually when I was 26, I had a stent fitted in my aorta, which in simple form is basically a spring. They do it keyhole surgery. They put it up and they put it into my aorta to open the valve because I had very high blood pressure. And it was kind of hereditary, but also I think the stress of my work and everything else had probably made it worse, standing on my feet a lot, things like that. And I knew the research. I knew that, dairy was bad for these sorts of things like clogging arteries. So I was like, again, I was open-minded. I was on medication for this condition. I was like, said to my doctor here, have you had any thoughts on this? Not really. They don't have any sort of nutritional training. So they didn't really give me much advice, but started looking into it more with Natasha's help. And instantly felt better from moving towards a vegan diet, was able to come off the medication, and eventually we're at a potluck, and then Tasha always recalls, like, there wasn't like now I'm vegan, but we were at a potluck and someone asked, are you vegan, Ed? And I was like, okay, I'm just going to commit to it. I'm vegan. I don't remember that day, but I just remember coming out and being like, okay, I'll commit to it. And I was still working at the restaurant at that time. So it was a bit of it was a hard transition for me. But I knew at that point we were heading towards starting our own business, and that it would get easier because I would be able to fully live a vegan lifestyle. And I haven't really looked back since then. I felt healthier. Like I said, I'm not on any medication for that now. And I get sort of checked up every couple of years, and they say, whatever you're doing, keep doing it. So they don't really have much of an opinion on vegan diet, but they say that my heart's strong, and so it's a great outcome for me.
Now, was that like a vegan party and you felt pressured by all these vegans?
Well,
Yeah, I'm
I mean, it was
vegan.
a
I'm
big,
vegan.
exactly. It was a big potluck. I think there was about 30 people there, so it wasn't. It was like, okay, I'll go vegan. Yeah, peer pressure.
It was all the vegans in Whistler just pushing him into a corner.
You
It
will
was
go
one person,
vegan.
but I nearly fell over on the other side of the room when I heard him say, "Yeah, I'm vegan." I was like, "Oh, what? Vegan now?" Because basically, when I went vegan, for me, it was a very black and white thing. Like I just got it. I understood suddenly why I had rejected meat as a child, like why I wasn't comfortable with it. Like I'd always known, I hadn't been able to put it into words to myself, like that I didn't like there were so many things. I think I was a natural born herbivore. I never liked eggs unless they were disguised in a cake. I didn't want to eat eggs. I was labeled as a fussy eater as a kid. I didn't like cheese unless it was melted. Like I wasn't into these cheese boards and things. I was very particular, but only about animal products, because actually I love pretty much all vegetables, fruits, grains, nuts, seeds, all of it.
Mhm.
But the only things I've ever actually been picky about have been animal products. So having that connection of, because I grew up in foster care, a psychiatrist that I had to go to when I was 10 decided that I manifested trauma in my eating habits. This was the sort of ridiculous analysis of the 90s. It was like, well, she's got fussy eating, where's her behavior problems? Because I was a high achiever at school. I had friends, I wasn't abnormal as they expect a lot of kids in care to grow up to be. And so they were kind of looking for something to sort of verify that I'd actually been through a broken home kind of traumatic experience. And they pinpointed the food, which is a fussy eater. There's lots of notes written by social workers about me, talking about my food habits. And it's kind of crazy to me now that I just didn't want to eat animals. And this was seen as like the crazy thing. I guess to some people it still is, but to me it's kind of wild that people have that or had that opinion. So it was really a relief when I realized the pain and suffering the animals go through, and the health benefits of being vegan versus the detriment to our health of eating animal products. And then obviously all the environmental catastrophes that are heightened by animal agriculture.
I think that's changed a lot now, though. I think kids are allowed to be, because I feel like you see more and more videos on social media of young kids, as young as 4 or 5, they love animals. So a lot of them are just like, they reject it. They're just like open to, they can see a lot more now. And I don't want to eat that chicken or that cow or anything like that. And I think it's changed from when we grew up, and it is more accepted. Well, I'd like to think it is more accepted.
It's more mainstream.
There's more information out there. So I think we will see it naturally like grow. I hope anyway. We'll see it grow.
I think we will, because there's environmentalists say there's no other option going forward, that there just isn't enough land for all the animals to have enough food. And so we're going to be forced to eventually take up more plant-based diets, whether we go there kicking and screaming or just embrace it. So I think it is the future, and I'm all for embracing it and encouraging everybody and being super positive about it.
Now, how did that make you feel when the analysis was you had trauma because of the way you were eating?
I don't know if I was that bothered in a way. Like when you grow up in care, there are lots of meetings about you. Like you'll be in a foster situation with foster parents, social workers will come, you'll be asked to stay for a while in the room, they'll ask you some questions, and then they'll send you away to your bedroom and they'll have a meeting about your progress and whatnot. And so you get used to people talking about you and making assumptions, and that reports are being written up about you and all of that. I didn't like any of that, because I knew that wasn't normal. Things like I couldn't just go stay at a friend's house for the night. They'd have to be police checked. So you'd have to tell them that you were in care. Your foster parents would want to meet them and talk to them and whatnot. whereas other kids at school would just kind of have sleepovers and it would all be really kind of casual.
Right.
And so you kind of get used to this bureaucracy, or having ultimately what it is the state become your parent, and having the state as a parent is a whole load of red tape to deal with over having like a human parent that can just make decisions at their own will for you.
Mm-hmm.
And I really rejected all of the whole thing about being in care. I remember once I wanted a piano, and because I wanted piano lessons, and social services said, no, you can't have a piano, there's no budget for that. They kind of laughed it off that a kid in care would want a piano. But then they offered me this adventure holiday with other kids in care, so I could meet other kids in care. And I was very offended by this, because I thought, I've got friends and they're normal and they're not in care, and I'm a normal person. And just because you put me in care and won't give me a piano doesn't mean I can't hang out with other people that have pianos and piano lessons. And I remember I wrote to the director of social services and said, thank you very much for offering me the holiday, but do you think you could actually spend the money on a piano? That's what I really want. And so I actually just kind of didn't pay too much attention to that psychiatrist and her analysis. I just rejected all discussions about me and decisions that were made for me. I was very headstrong, knew where I was going in life, and wanted to just be myself. So I'm quite grateful that I've always been that headstrong and won't let people put me down, and have a lot of self-belief in myself. Yeah.
That's beautiful. Now, Ed, did you struggle with anything when you first became vegan? When you first came out as vegan at the party?
Yeah, I mean, like I still meet people now and they're just like, I love cheese. And for me, I'm just like, you might not call yourself vegan, but just basically be vegan and eat cheese, and eventually you'll change over. For me, it was blue cheese. I was working late in restaurants and obviously love sourdough bread, so my treat at the end of the service would be sourdough, blue cheese and chutney. And it is addictive. It's like, they've come out with research that it's got the same addictive as like heroin or something like that. It's right. Like it does the same thing to our brain. And literally every night I'd be like, I'm just going to get a little snack, and I had to cut it out. I had to like go cold tofu or whatever.
And then you'd go to the garage at night time and get the Snickers bars. Yeah,
treats and things like that. So I've got a sweet tooth. So, but then Tash was very kind and started making me vegan Snicker bars and things like that. So I think it was more treats and like naughty things. But eventually I just had to commit. And then it's like you just make little mistakes sometimes. Like I might have a beer and then suddenly realize that, it's a sour and they've used certain bacteria in the production of it. So then you're like, oh, I need to read more. And that's another thing that I'd never really done, even as a chef, because I bought vegetables and fruits. I wasn't really into packaged foods. Not that I am now, but I just remember being more aware of it.
Right.
And then now we just buy certain brands that are either 100% vegan companies, or we just know certain products that we buy. It just becomes easier. And I think you get a sort of repertoire of what you like to make and the companies you like to support and things like that. But it is a challenge in the beginning, but it's very rewarding. And I feel like that's the same as when I became vegan. It was quite selfish. It was for health reasons, even though I've always called myself an animal lover and an environmentalist. Like I love documentaries and things like that. It definitely started with health, and then it grew the more I educated myself into the impact by me making these choices and other people making these choices, what we can achieve was huge. And then obviously animal welfare and all those sorts of things, like really calling myself an animal lover, not just sort of cats and dogs and lions and things like that, all animals across the board. And yeah, it's huge. It's definitely one of the life-changing moments that I'll never go back. It still perplexes me why people go vegan for a few years and then they're like, bacon maybe go back, or barbecue. For me, I'm like, I smell the flesh, and because essentially when you smell something cooking, like barbecue, for example, it's not really the meat, it's all the spices and the marinade that you can smell. So you can have a vegan barbecue and it can smell just as good or better because it's what you're putting on there, what's like caramelizing and all those sorts of things.
How did it feel when you aligned your actions with your values?
It was complicated in the beginning. When I first went vegan, I was working at the restaurant that I'd worked for 4 years previously as the sous chef.
Mm-hmm.
So I was, a senior position. I've been head chef back home in the UK and places like that. So I was used to running kitchens, fine dining kitchens, menu planning. And I just made the conscious decision, okay, well, I need to start heading towards opening this vegan bakery with Tash. But in the meantime, while we're sort of planning that, how I need to be putting as many vegan options on that menu as possible, the garnish. So if people come in, there's lots of options. So I started the bread program, but I also added vegan desserts to the menu, which actually kept the owners happy because it increased sales. Because you don't have to be vegan. There's a lot of people that, are dairy intolerant or just want something a bit lighter or to finish the meal.
Well, the desserts just sounded nice.
Well, they're just good desserts. So it kind of fueled me in that sense. I wasn't eating anything. So that was a bit tricky. I had to get the other chefs to try it. But like I said, there was this drive that within the sort of next year, we would be opening a business together.
Now, where did you guys get the courage to just take that leap to start your business?
For me, it was because we had this idea. So Ed was already kind of making bread for the restaurant, because the restaurant used to buy in bread from a hotel, and Ed had made bread at all the other restaurants he'd worked with prior to the one in Whistler. So he suggested that they start their own bread program and that he could head that. And then he started experimenting with recipes at home, and he would make 2 loaves at once, and we would eat one, and he would take another loaf to our yoga studio, because we used to do Ashtanga yoga at a studio here in Whistler with our teacher Tina Hashmati, and she would get a loaf of bread, and all the yogis would smell it and go, "Oh, that smells pretty good. When can we get a loaf of this bread?" And then people were like quite forceful. They're like, "We would buy this from you." So then Ed said to the restaurant, "Can I rent the kitchen once a week and just make some bread for friends?" And I think the first week Ed started, he was worried if he would be able to sell 30 loaves of bread. But it soon quickened and the word got out. And then it was, I think we got up to about 150 loaves a week.
Wow.
And the restaurant kind of got a bit annoyed in the end. And they said, because they were kind of getting more known for the bread than the fine dining food. And people started to think Ed was the head chef, which he wasn't. And eventually the restaurant said, "This is really great. Let's start a sandwich shop." And Ed said, "Yeah, I'd kind of like it to be vegan." And they said, yeah, vegan, and like make some ham and some cheese. And we kind of figured, yeah, the vision isn't the one that we want to go for. So the customers were saying, "You need to open a bakery. Like, this is ridiculous, once a week. Like, I want to get this every day." People were getting turned away because there weren't enough breads and blah, blah, blah. So we thought, okay, we'll open a bakery. We've got buy-in from the community, but it's going to have to be vegan because obviously we're vegan and we don't want to profit from animal cruelty. And then I started listening to a podcast called Vegan Business Talk with a lady called Katrina Fox, who's a bit of a legend in the vegan PR world. She's written for Forbes and very well connected. And I just listened to vegan entrepreneurs because I thought, has anyone actually ever started a vegan business other than sort of juice bars and things? I was like, are there many vegan businesses out there? So I kind of needed that input to sort of say, hey, look, there's loads of different types of vegan businesses, and this is something that's viable. And so we were kind of vegan by stealth. Maybe we still are. Like, we don't have a big sign saying vegan bakery, all vegans welcome. It's organic sourdough bakery, and then in a smaller strap line, 100% plant-based and vegan friendly. So we wanted the locals to feel that it was a place for them, but we also didn't want to put people off. And the problems we had in the beginning is, and sometimes still do, is that vegans don't believe that we're vegan because it just looks like a regular sourdough bakery. The products look good, they have finesse, and they taste delicious. And people say all the time, like, it doesn't even taste vegan.
I mean, I've made some bread before. I'm not like even close to anywhere near what you're at, but last I knew, it was like flour, water, salt, and yeast. Isn't that like bread? Isn't that like normal bread?
Sourdough, we don't put any yeast in it.
Right, but
the wild.
But yes, I just mean like if you're just making bread, it's vegan, right? Okay,
yeah.
So
it's true, but and that's what I was hoping for. I was hoping for we just open a bread shop, and we just do bread, because that's what I knew. That's what I tested for a year and a half, and I knew it would sell. But then the realization comes that people want cookies and cakes and what was going to be our signature, sweet thing. We've got all these people coming off the mountain. So we landed on sourdough cinnamon buns, which has now become our sort of signature sweet item. And we sell a lot of them. We can't really make enough a lot of the days. But I had to pivot, shall we say, and start. And that's where the creativity of being a chef for so many years, that sort of gave me extra drive to make products and create these new items that would be, like Tash said, not just vegan, but as good as their counterparts. So when people come in, it's sort of trying to elevate our baking every day and make product as best as we can.
How important was it to you to be B-Corp certified?
It was something I'd thought about for a while because of the vegans not believing that we were vegan. Like, there were some quite difficult conversations. Vegans come in and they'd say, is anything vegan? And I'd say, yeah, everything. And they go, is this vegan? Is that vegan? Yeah, everything. Okay, I'll get a cinnamon bun. Okay. And would you like any cream cheese frosting with that? Was that vegan? Yes, that's vegan. And then, can I get a cappuccino? Okay, sure, with oat milk. Great, yeah. And then, do you want chocolate on top? Is that vegan? Or no, I'm vegan. And it was like literally like, yeah, it's vegan as well. Yeah, it's vegan as well. So then I started thinking, maybe we should get a vegan certification so we can just say to these people, look, circle with a V in it, look, vegan, verified. But then our issue with that was our community is not inherently vegan. They're everyday people. And could it put people off having a V that was that noticeable? This was our worry. And also, is it just about, for us, veganism isn't just about not eating animals. It's beyond that. It's about not causing unnecessary suffering and in any shape or form to anybody. And that's why we source as organically as possible, as locally as possible. Like, we want to have the least impact on the environment as well as the animals, and to some degree the people. I mean, we do put sugar in our cinnamon buns, so they're not, like they're not healthy. They're definitely more of like an ethical treat. We've eliminated animals from the supply chain and we're happy with that. But sometimes I struggle with the fact that we have sweet treats, because I am a kind of very much whole food, raw vegan in my heart. But because we had to open a business in a ski resort, you have to analyze, what's going to work. And being at the bottom of a ski gondola, you have to look at your target market, what they want, what they expect. And if we're going to get people eating vegan food, then it's got to sort of match their desires. And so that's why, that's how I sit with the amount of cinnamon buns that we produce and cookies and things. So I'm okay with it because it's ethical. So those really were the sort of incentives for me starting that business.
Yeah, I think that's one of the great things, right? Is if you can get somebody to have a cinnamon bun and they're like, this is vegan, I can eat this way and be vegan, then a lot of people, especially say coming down from the mountain, they're going to be interested. They'll be like, oh, wow, I can be vegan and still eat yummy, good food. then maybe I'll try it. Try something else.
And it's not just delicious, it's with organic ingredients. And even the cinnamon that we use is from Sri Lanka. And the cinnamon company, it's true cinnamon. So it's not this Chinese cassia stuff. It's the real cinnamon. And it's the percentage of their profits support an elephant sanctuary. And so even the cinnamon does good that's in the cinnamon bun. The flour is sourced from Canada, non-GMO organic flour. We try, and so I felt that the V certification, the vegan, wouldn't be able to encompass all of the things that we're about, the environmental and the animal free. So I looked into what would really attract mass market and be a testament to everything we're about, not just eliminated animals, but more than that.
But not also, like what Tash hasn't mentioned, which is really important to us, is how we look after our people. So what we also found by looking into the B-Corp was how you treat your staff,
right?
Our community, and it's like the whole, it's really the circle economy of like everything that our company is involved in, and all the sort of things that we implement within that.
And part of that is like not just the people, but also giving back. So we donate 1% of our revenue, not profits, but our revenue, to animal and environmental causes. One of our main initiative is that we plant a tree for every coffee we sell. And we've planted over 66,000 at the time of this recording. And I'd like to get to 100,000 by next year.
Yeah, I was about to say that you guys give back so much. I mean, everything from partnering with trees for the future to giving 1% of your revenue to good causes. What makes that so important to you?
Honestly, I wasn't sure if we were going to be profitable as a vegan business or as a small business. And especially, we were 1 year old when we hit that thing that happened in 2020. And I kind of thought, if we make no money and go bankrupt, at least we've had some impact. We've planted a forest, if nothing else. And you can't take that away from us, whereas the money can go out as quickly as it came in. I mean, good Lord, with the amount of equipment and things like that you have to pay when we just spent $10,000 on refrigeration because we had some issues, and refrigeration is really crucial in a food safe kitchen, especially. So little things like that will come along and kind of slap you in the face, and they can take away your profits. So that was my main thing. I thought, well, I want to do something that I can be proud of, not beyond just making money. But thankfully, we are a profitable business. So you can't give back if you're not profitable, essentially.
Let's get to the cookbook. I mean, you guys were kind enough to give me an advance copy, and it looks amazing. It's such a beautiful cookbook. You can see that you guys took the time and the effort to put in some really nice stuff into the cookbook. Now, like I said, I've made some bread before, but I'm not a sourdough bread maker by any means. I tried it, and I just can't figure out the starter stuff. So how hard is it to get that going? Because your book has a lot of stuff that has to do with sourdough. So how hard is it to get that starter started?
It's a good question. Like a lot of people, they come in, they're like, oh, can I just buy some starter from you? Like I had one years ago, but I don't have it anymore. So we wanted to make sure, there was a good guide at the beginning on how to start your own starter, because people all over the world, it's different temperatures, different schedules, how often they want to make bread. Obviously we feed our starter every 12 hours because we're making bread daily. But for a lot of people, they just want to make a couple of loaves once a week. So there's a whole guide in there of how to start your culture and how to maintain it, how to look after it. And then some really nice sort of loaf recipes. But then there's 100 recipes. So there's a lot in there, but it's not all sourdough. A lot of it comes under that umbrella. I would say about 50% of it is bread based. But the reason that Penguin sort of came to us, which was we were so, unbelievably blown away by, they're one of the biggest publishing houses in the world. was because they just saw a huge gap in the market. There's so many vegan cookbooks, but there's not a whole bunch of baking books. So Natasha and I, when we first were sort of coming up with ideas, a lot of the stuff is what we've been doing the last few years at the bakery and customer favorites, because we knew people would want the cinnamon bun recipe, for example. But there's a lot of cakes and cookies in there and tarts, or things that we like to make at home, or things that we would like to do at the bakery, but we don't have the space to do. For example, bagels or donuts, things like that. We would love to do them, but there's only so much that we're able to with such a small team.
Right.
So it was really hard to write in the book along, at the same time we were trying to run our bakery. But it was an amazing experience just to sort of almost develop these new recipes, especially because they're vegan. So I couldn't just mimic things. I was taking a lot of classic recipes that I'd done in the past and veganizing them. But that's not, you can't just swap things out. Swapping an egg out for flax or chia isn't simple. So there was a lot of testing involved. We wanted it to be, recipes for beginner bakers, intermediate, and some challenging ones that you can grow into, a cookbook that it's not just for the coffee table. It's there to be used and shared, with friends and family.
Now, what is important about sourdough culture, and what makes a good one?
Consistency.
Consistency. With the schedule, the microbes, they're unbelievably intelligent that we can't even fathom. To the point, I'll notice a difference in our starter if I feed it one day 12 hours and then the next day there's a 9-hour or 10-hour gap, or we're in the mountains here, so the weather, especially this year, has fluctuated a lot. Last week it was 14 degrees, and now today it was Celsius. It was 30 Celsius. So it's almost like doubled in temperature, and we have some sort of cooling system at the bakery, but the starter really notices those differences. So it really becomes it almost like a child for me. It was I have to nurture it and look after it and notice these little differences, and that's what keeps me so interested and passionate about sourdough. Is that for me, if it was just packet yeast, commercial yeast, water, flour, salt, and it comes out the same every time, I would get bored very quickly. But the fact that I have to really study the weather and use my previous experience to know, okay, this time last year when the temperature dropped, I needed to increase my water temperature for the dough. And because it is just 3 ingredients, like Natasha said, we only use organic Canadian flour. Our salt we source from Vancouver Island, which is incredible salt. It's probably like 50 times as expensive as regular table salt, because they filter the seawater for microplastic. We get this beautiful local sea salt that we can use in the bread. So we're just striving to make the best product we can.
And we filter the water as well. We found if you use tap water, we found it could make the starter smell eggy, like sulfuric. And we weren't happy with that. So we carbon filter the water, and just every step, I think, is about quality. And we talk in the book about using all your senses. Like Ed will smell the dough, like the dough, the leaven, the starter, and he will taste it. And I think you really get to know like how good it is even before it's baked. You need to start detecting, using all your senses, and obviously observing how much it's growing and sinking, because it does tend to, when you feed it, it will come up and then it will go back down. And so watching those fluctuations in the dough, I think, helps. And there's a little trick bakers do where they use an elastic band and put it around the jar to see the line and see how far up it's gone. And actually, Ed did a little, you did that video once, didn't you, of the rye starter and the wheat starter?
I did a little time lapse just to see, like, the movement and things like that. And I think it was one of the first videos that went viral on Instagram, just because people love to see, like, it was relatively quick because it was a time lapse, but just how they move. And it was really actually during the pandemic, like I think a lot of people started making sourdough.
Right.
And then it's sort of like, people started going back to work and life sort of resumed. But I think some people carried on, but a lot of our customers don't. They're like, now I know how long it takes and how much time and effort you put in. I'm just going to buy it from you. So it was really nice in that way. And the sourdough community within Instagram, especially, is really sort of like strong and supportive, which I really love. I always try and sort of people shoot me, private messages or comments, and I'll always try and sort of help people as much as I can.
It sounds like, in a way, it sounds really difficult to create a starter, but it's not really, is it? I mean, otherwise you wouldn't have a cookbook in showing people how to do it.
Exactly. I mean, for me, I can teach a 5-year-old how to make sourdough. You can make really tasty homemade bread quite easily, homemade sourdough. What we're trying to achieve is we're selling it to customers, so they have high expectations of, I'm spending $10 on this loaf. I want it to look beautiful, taste beautiful, all these. So there's extra pressure on me. But at home, you'll make 5 or 6 loaves and you'll see a difference every time you do it. And that's the other thing. It's really rewarding for the home bake, for any baker, really. It's such a rewarding thing, and it just makes your whole house smell incredible. They always say if you want to sell your house, then just have a loaf of bread in the oven. Because it just makes people like, you smell it. It's normally at the start of the meal. So breaking bread together, it's like we've been doing it for thousands of years.
It's a holy practice.
So yeah,
Christianity.
Exactly. It's based around so many religions. They've dated it back now, I think, as 18,000 years ago. They found it in the tombs in Egypt. You can get I can really geek out. I love it, and I think that's why it was. It's nice to share that and with writing the book and everything.
Now, what is it about bread that makes you so passionate?
It's vegan.
It's vegan. Yeah. I think it's like early. Natasha talks about early like childhood memories. We grew up on the southeast coast in England, and we used to go to France quite a bit as kids because it was just a cheaper holiday. The weather in England is terrible, even in the summer. So for my parents, it was an easier, we go to France, they can leave us on the beach, I've got 2 brothers and a sister, so go and play. And then we would have these amazing meals, lunches and dinners in these little sort of old restaurants in France. They'd have like a 3-course set meal. We thought it was the best ever because they'd bring you endless supply of baguette. And my mum was just like, eat as much as you like. We had hollow legs. So 3 hungry boys. So I think that's where my passion for bread really started, because I always remember each summer we'd go to France and have this like crusty French stick, as much as you wanted.
Now, you guys seem like the perfect pair, right? I mean, Ed's strength, baking. Natasha's strength seems to be business. Obviously,
Yes.
I'm simplifying things, but how has this dynamic worked for you guys so far?
I think it's just we always say defined roles. I think that's, to sum it up into like really quick and simple, is we have defined roles within the business. There's things that we come together on and daily, and probably too much. We always say, okay, once we've eaten dinner, we won't talk about work, and literally straight away we'll start talking about work again, in whatever form it might be, what's happened or what's coming up in the future. So like you said, you have to be passionate about what you do. But defined roles, I think, helps.
Yeah, I do come to it with a different mindset. For me, it was very much, I wanted to start a vegan business and I wanted our community to make more vegan choices. I'm not expecting everyone to put their hand up like we do and say, hey, we're vegan, and commit to that. And, labels also can be quite divisive. So I don't, as much as we identify as vegan for our own reasons, I don't think it's worthwhile expecting everybody to identify as vegan, because you know, it's an ideal, isn't it? So vegans, you know, like our car upholstery, I think it's leather. I don't think you can actually buy a car on, I mean, one of my friends tried and she couldn't find any that were completely vegan. Or like the paint and your house and the upholstery, you know, it's possible the carpet that we have in our rental apartment that we didn't put in is wool. I don't know. There's, you know, so all of these aspects of daily life are perhaps not vegan, but we do the best we can. And so I think if I can get my community to support us and enjoy our products, then they're moving in the right direction of making vegan choices. And that's really what gets me up and out of bed every day and wanting to carry on doing what we're doing. And I think the book is, because some of the local people have said to us, well, you're giving all your secrets away. And I said, yeah, maybe all the other cafes in town will start making cinnamon buns. I mean, they won't, because they're incredibly hard work and skilled, and they don't have skilled workers. But they don't
have me.
And they're also cute. It's not just Ed. We have a phenomenal baker with us called Jana from Slovakia, whose family have had a bakery in Slovakia for 3 generations. So it's not just us. There is a team as well. But I just feel that I want the world to become more compassionate, and my background before the ski school thing was teaching English for 15 years, and so I had a very different background in that, and I would market the school and attend conferences and things like that in the industry. So I was used to sort of a bit of marketing and networking, and that kind of gave me a good skill set to match with Ed, who, if you hope you don't mind me sharing, is dyslexic, and so very creative, very passionate about food, very capable in the kitchen. But for us to join forces is an unstoppable force, and it is a good dynamic duo we've been referred to, and I think that, yeah, we are definitely.
With all the stuff that you do, all the giving back and everything, what is the most rewarding part of what you do?
That's a good question.
I think we had a little chat before we went live today, and for me, it's little things day to day. Like Tash said, what we do for our community is having that hub, like outside of these big corporate companies, you know, like Walmart and things like that. Like coming from England and having a high street where you go to the local bakery and you go to the fruit and veg shop, and you bump into your neighbor or your friend or things like that. Our bakery is a real community hub. Like, people bump into each other and they're happy. And, you know, it's a very active, we have an open plan bakery. So that was really important for us, for kids and families to see where the bread was being made, and they can watch while they're waiting for their coffee, and hang out a bit. It's very small. We don't have many seats or anything like that, but just the buzz that happens on a daily basis, for me, it kind of keeps me motivated, that people are happy to be supporting a family run business, which unfortunately you don't see very often now.
Now, I read a bit about you, Ed, that you were the footman for the state visits of Buckingham Palace and Windsor Castle. What secrets can you tell us about your time there?
It feels like a lifetime ago. I went to, after I finished school at 16, my mum's a teacher and still teaches to this day. And she was like, you need an education. You know, you can't, I'm not just letting you drop out and go and work in restaurants, even though I could have, you know, would have gone to fine dining restaurants. She was like, you need a sort of degree or qualification. So I went to one of the best catering schools in the UK, studied hospitality for 3 years. And within that, I was doing the cooking, but also front of house serving. And we were lucky enough, when there was a state visit at Buckingham Palace or Windsor Castle, that our college took the best students, the sort of, you know, the most well-behaved, or, you know, the higher achievers. And we would get paid for it as well. So I did about a dozen or so over a couple of years, mostly at Buckingham Palace, but sometimes at Windsor Castle, and would just they call it a footman, but assisting the full-time staff there, moving tables and chairs, carrying food and drinks. And it was a very cool experience. I remember being in the music room in Buckingham Palace, huge, beautiful room, huge piano. It was a canapé reception. And I saw the Queen in the corner. And I was like, my mum's a real royalist. Like she loves all of that. And I was thinking, I just want to, my idea was to have this tray of canapes and I'd just slowly back up, serve some people, and then turn round and serve the Queen. But obviously she has a lot of security and her own personal butler. And as soon as I got within about 6 feet, I was ushered away. They obviously sort of knew what was going on here and ushered, I must have been 17 or so, and I got ushered away. But I came within a few feet of the Queen.
Right.
But it was a great experience.
Now, what is one thing that's really exciting for you guys right now besides the cookbook, besides the launch of the cookbook?
It's hard to think about anything else right now, to be honest, Fred.
Outside the cookbook. Yeah, I mean, that's our main focus, because a lot of people have said to us that the easy part is writing the book. I don't know if that's so much true with regards to a cookbook, because obviously there was a lot of testing involved, but it's sort of promoting it and make sure that we do the book justice.
Mm-hmm.
So we're both from the UK, so we have like a launch party that we're starting to plan in November for media and things like that. There'll be things happening here in Canada. So yeah, that's our plan for now. People always ask us, if we get a second location or anything like that. I think it's more just being consistent, growing the brand and the awareness, and trying to just keep the bakery busy, really.
Do you have a hack or a tip or another way for you to keep on track with your plant-based diet?
Yes, I do. So plan your meals in advance. And this is also great for budgeting and avoiding naughty things at the supermarket. So if you write a list and stick to it, that helps. And so you are not tempted to go off and buy vegan cookbooks. There's also a lot of blogs online. I really like plantbasedonabudget.com with Tony Okamoto. She also has a cookbook that I buy all my staff every Christmas because they are living in a ski resort. It's expensive to live here, even though we pay them really well. And so it's good for them to have money saving tips. And for people that are not vegan, there's another incentive to try it, because save money, buy lentils, don't buy steaks, for example. So you can go to a website like hers, and she has meal plans and shopping lists at the beginning, so it's super easy. And then you just go through your cupboard, see what you've got, see what you need. And I also buy our groceries through an online local grocery called spud.ca, and that spud means sustainable produce for urban delivery. They say urban, but it's very nice of them. They do drive all the way up to Whistler, which is 2 hours from Vancouver, and they drop off groceries pretty much every day of the week. And what I like about that is you don't walk past, in the physical aisles, you don't see all the Ben and Jerry's ice cream and all those naughty things. You just go online, you just type in the search, write potatoes or carrots or whatever you're looking for. So there's a few pop-up ads when they've got promos, but then I'm like, well, maybe if it's on sale, I'll go for it, the naughty thing. But I try to just make it fruits and vegetables. And also you can write a list and maybe you've added something naughty to it, but then you might sleep on it and think, I'm going to take that off the list because I don't need that and it's not good for me. So I like online shopping for that reason. You can miss all the crap, go straight to the produce section of the website, or just enter in the search what you need, meal plans, and then your life's so much easier because you can just get cooking. You know what you're going to cook that day.
It's less packaging as well, because we always get it turns up in big bins, mostly paper packaging. And I think they really strive to sort of reduce waste, like avocados and things like that. They always arrive rock hard because they don't have to have them in a big pile looking fancy in the store. So I think it's kind of, from a sustainable point of view, their food waste as a company is very low as well. So
that's a nice little plug for Spud, but we're not paid by them, by the way. But thank you, Spud, for being there.
I think not,
and I think also we also go to the vegan restaurants. We always try to support the vegans, also because we're a vegan business. We understand how hard it is for independent food and beverage operators to get people in the door. We don't have the big branding of like McDonald's, and I shouldn't even say their names, actually. They get enough promotion, all the big brands. So Happy Cow app, just always switch to the vegan mode, and it just shows you all vegan restaurants. And then you don't have even the choice again. It's not, the non-vegan stuff's not even on the menu. It's great. Those would be my takes. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, I was just going to say, like, when I started, it wasn't putting any pressure on it. If people are just plant curious, or they make a slip up, I don't think it's like, personally, I'm just like, if you just try and do your best, and if you have a craving, then maybe, you know, see and go back to it. Maybe you're like, actually, our taste buds are so complex that actually, like, I remember sometimes the first stage, I got given a dairy in my coffee, and instantly I knew, because it just tasted sour and kind of rancid, and my taste buds had already changed. That I knew that I didn't like that. So I feel like it's like, or a lot of, one of our friends who runs a sort of vegan page, he says 80-20, so it's sort of 20% sort of junk food, you know, vegan burgers and things like that, and 80% whole foods. So you're getting a nice balance, you know. Don't feel bad if you have a craving for a vegan burger or something like that. I think it's just let go of trying to be perfect. No one's perfect, and just sort of enjoy the ride.
Yeah, it's always frustrating when people say, and I think we mentioned this at the beginning of the show, oh, I tried being vegan, or I could never be vegan because I love cheese. And it's like, well, yeah, but you can be vegan with everything else. You could just eat cheese if you have to. If you really haven't found a good vegan cheese replacement one yet, then just eat everything else. You don't have to eat a beef burger with cheese. You could have a lentil burger with cheese if it's just the cheese. But then I think, and from vegans and from non-vegans, there's this sort of like extremist attitude. It's like, you got to be all or nothing. It's like, if you say you're vegan, you better commit 100%. And how dare you eat cheese? You better not call yourself vegan if you're going to do that. And it's like, well, I think we're never going to achieve much if we go around judging everyone with that kind of like idea. And non-vegans would do it too. They'll be like, so you're vegan, so what brands of makeup do you use then? Oh, so have you ever used a condom? Have you ever done this? Because, you know, that's not vegan. And it's like, well, yeah, we've all done non-vegan things. Vegans have done non-vegan things, because guess what? Half of us don't even know what's vegan and not vegan. We don't know what's been tested on animals. A lot of the time, they tell you when it's not tested on an animal, but they don't tell you when it is tested on an animal. Like, you don't get a paracetamol packet and see tested on rabbits and monkeys and dogs. Like, it would be nice to know. I would like to know that, but it's not there. So probably, yeah, we've all 100%, we've all made non-vegan choices. We can't go around expecting perfection, because, I mean, it's like being Christian. Somebody says, I'm Christian. You go, oh, right, to go to church every Sunday? Oh, you better go to church every Sunday, because if you miss one, you're not Christian anymore. I mean, that's ridiculous. No one's saying that. You read the Bible every night? Probably not. But if they identify as that, good for them, you know, on their way. Hopefully that's the right path for them. And I just feel that, yeah, veganism's the same thing. It's an ideal. We all want to strive for it. None of us are perfect. It's fine.
And buy our book.
Buy our book. That'll help. Sorry, I get quite passionate about these things with the sort of judgmenty people out there. There's lots of judgy people.
Now, finally, can you give me one word to describe how you felt before you became vegan, and one word to describe how you feel now that you are vegan?
That is a good question. How did I feel before?
I think I felt confused. As I explained earlier, it was the knowing that I didn't like and want to do certain things like eat meat, but not having the logic of really what that was. So I think I would say it was confusion, and now it's enlightenment. Obviously not the completely, self-realized Buddha style of enlightenment, but the awareness of what's really going on here, and that I don't want to participate in it.
Good answer.
Thank you, Ed.
It's such a word. I should have gone first, because how do I follow that? I can't just say I agree with her.
Sure,
I
you
don't
can.
want to, I don't know. I always thought before I went vegan that I was healthy and, active and things like that. But
would you say
I couldn't sum up. I know now I feel more energetic. I don't think I could do my work and the amount of hours that we work and the focus that we have on what we want to achieve without being vegan. So I definitely feel proactive and one word though.
Can I suggest, and then you can, if I'm wrong, then you'll know what it is. Before you felt ignorant, like you didn't know all these things.
Yeah.
And maybe now you feel more conscious.
Conscious and educated, I would say. I thought I was a real foodie, but actually I feel more, educated, basically. I've gone out there, I've done reading, I've watched certain documentaries, and I'm putting it into practice. I'm talking the talk, essentially, from writing the cookbook, running a vegan bakery, which sometimes I'm just like, wouldn't it be easier if I could just use some eggs in this cake? It's not easy. I have to really work at it, but I feel like that's what life's about. It's kind of always striving to be better each day. So
what about you, Fred? How did you feel before you were vegan? How do you feel now? I'm putting it on you.
Oh, you're turning it around.
Turn it around.
I would, yeah. I don't know. I'm not ready for this. I would probably say that I felt naive, and then I would say that my eyes were just so open, and it's just such a rabbit hole that I had no idea existed. I don't know what the one word for that would be, but being able to understand how big an issue this is. I mean, we were talking earlier about beer. Oh, there's wine with isinglass. I didn't even know that existed. There's sugar, there's sugar with bone char. All of these things that you don't know existed, and all of a sudden you get down that rabbit hole and you're just like, wow, this is crazy. And I agree with you that no one's perfect. It's about progress and not perfection. And the big thing is to do the best you can and to do as little harm as possible. I don't think that anybody, whoever the most vegan person is in the world, the vegan police, whoever they are, I don't think anybody's 100% vegan, but we do the best we can, and I think that's what's important.
Yeah, and I think if you do feel the need to call someone out, or let's say bring something to somebody's attention, I think we all know that it's better to do it face to face than write it on an internet blog or Instagram message, or anything written. I think is always just taken like level 10 crazy angry and offensive. And I think those conversations it is better to have it face to face, because then you can pick up a lot more on body language and tone of the voice, and see how the other person's receiving the message, and then adapt and adjust. And I think that that's really important. So I've learned that the hard way. As a new vegan, I remember being shocked about animal slaughter videos and sharing them and that kind of thing.
I think also we've changed personally from becoming just vegans to vegan business owners. The way you talk to people, our staff, customers. Tasha always says to me, when someone says something to you, or you want to say something to them, just stop and think, what's it going to achieve? Like you saying that to that person, calling them out for doing that or not doing that, what's it going to achieve? Is it just going to make them feel bad and upset? Or is it best just to let them sit with that themselves and come to that realization on their own? Because essentially you're just going to make yourself look bad and probably sit on that and then end up going back to them and apologizing for the way you spoke to them. So sometimes I feel like it's just like, take a minute. And I always say that, just take a breath and then think, yeah. And the reason I was able to choose my words before is because we've been together for 20 years this year. So even though we look young and youthful, been together for 20 years. She knows me pretty well.
Such a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you so much for taking the time. What is the best way for people to buy your book and follow you guys on either Instagram, the web, or social media in general?
You can get all of our links and the book link as well on edsbred.com. That's edsbred.com. And you can also find us on Instagram at eds_bread. That's eds_BRED. And follow us there. That's our most lively platform, I would say. Penguin have a page on their website that links to booksellers. You can type your zip code in the search and find your local bookstore. You can also go to that massive website that sells books and enter the book there. We appreciate that because it generates like these popularity lists, bestseller lists, and it's quite good for authors to get ranked highly on these sites. It helps to promote the book. But if people don't want to support those huge brands that have kind of taken away independent bookstores, we understand. So you can support your local bookstore. And if you don't have the money to buy the book, that's fine. You can always ask your local library to get it in as well. So lots of different options to get the book.
Thanks again, Natasha and Ed, for being on Plant Your Seed.
Thanks so much. It was really fun.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it, Fred. Thank you. You're a great host.
Hope you are inspired by this story, and remember, it's never too late to plant your seed. Links to everything we talked about on the podcast can be found on Instagram at plant.yourseed in the show notes tab in the bio. If you enjoyed the show, remember to leave us a review, and until next time, thank you for listening.